I think we're all told from a young age in various ways that being smart is like a superpower. And we just assume that the more intelligent you are, the easier it should be to take a great idea and bring it into the world. But for a lot of us, the opposite is true. Our intelligence isn't an engine, it's a brake. If you're the kind of person who has all sorts of half finished projects sitting in a folder on your computer, box in your closet, you fill up notepads, you might be caught in the intelligence trap. Today, I want to go into some specific reasons why smart people struggle to finish things. Towards the end, I'm going to pose a question to you that answering it truthfully might be able to help you break this cycle. And just as an aside here, I know that the subject of intelligence and is somebody smart or not, that can be contentious. What I'm kind of talking about here is the conjunction of logic and creativity. And if you have high amounts of both, it can lead to a lot of problems for you if you pursue creative things or just in life in general. So, the first thing that you often will run into, and this is fairly obvious, but it is one of the bigger surface level ones, is overthinking. For a smart person that has creativity and logic, a project is never just a task. It is a web of infinite variables. You can't just paint a picture. You want to know everything about the paints you're going to use. You want to know the history of the art style and the artists and the paint brushes that you're using and the brush strokes. And this leads to an issue of trying to think your way to completion. But creativity is not a math problem. It's not something you can solve before you start. Another issue is option paralysis. One example of this is simply that you have so many ideas in your head that you don't know which ones to do something with. The other side of it is that you end up with so many potentially good paths to follow that choosing just one becomes a struggle. You aren't sure which one's the best path to choose. And forget that sometimes the best path to choose is just choosing one and sticking with it. And then there is another one of the more surface level ones that a lot of people deal with to varying degrees, and that's the skill gap disappointment. When you have that logic and creativity and just generally high intelligence, one of the things that comes with that is spotting patterns. And this leads to developing a sense of taste early in life, and generally quicker and perhaps even more developed than other people. Which is good for some things, but when you want to create something yourself, it becomes a route to being hyper aware of our own failings, both compared to other people, but even worse compared to our vision. So while one person may have a more emotional connection to how they do things, they might get through the process of writing or painting and be able to finish and step back, and then they look at it and go, ooh, that it could be better, that is a bit of a mistake, I really need to try to fix this. But when you have that kind of logic, creativity, generally higher intelligence in a mechanical brain function kind of way, you often will spot your errors, your mistakes, while you're creating them in real time. And that leads to disappointment. It's like, why am I not better at this? And that leads to frustration and quitting. Next, we start getting into some of the really personal stuff. It's going to possibly be uncomfortable. And one of the biggest ones, I think, is allowing our projects to become part of our identity. If you are the kind of person who your whole life you were told how smart you were, and you feel that you are a smart person, it can become very easy to have your intelligence become a massive part of your identity. And we project that onto the things we want to do, our projects, anything in life at times. And doing this can create paralyzing fear. I have suffered through this many times. Even right now, doing the YouTube channel, this hits me. It's the fear that if the project isn't perfect, if it fails, what does that say about me? What does it say about you? That's the issue. Maybe not really as smart as would like to think. And this leads to quitting, because if you don't finish, you protect yourself. A work in progress can always still be a masterpiece in your head. A finished project is subject to judgment. Or maybe you do sometimes finish things, but you never actually publish them. You don't send them out, you don't self-publish, you don't show the art to anybody. It just gets tucked away in a corner somewhere. One of the ways we avoid that fear is by planning. Again, this is where you really get that logic and creativity coming together. Planning feels good. It gives you a dopamine hit. It feels like you're accomplishing something. But the truth is that it's more of a shield. We dream, we scheme. Maybe you buy something expensive paints, an expensive camera. You think that that's what you needed. Or maybe because my focus is on writing on this channel, you're the type of person that will fully outline every last detail of a story idea, and then you go, oh no, I'm just gonna quit on this one and try again. You start a new plan because you want to have that feeling of being safe. You don't want to take the risk, and it gives you that dopamine rush again. And then, of course, especially the logic heavy part of our brains causes us to then rationalize our fears. You tell yourself things like, I just need to research more, or the timing isn't right. It's kind of like you build a cage to protect yourself out of logic. This next section, and I do have this organized into notes. I am a new channel, so I'm trying to figure things out. I kind of like this more conversational tone, but I'm still trying things. This section is another one that's going to hit home, I think, for a lot of people. It's one that's very personal to me, is anxiety and uncertainty. A lot of smarter people, a lot of people in general, but especially when you have that logic and creativity working with and against you, is to confuse clarity with readiness. It's the uncertainty issue. You want to see the whole path before you take the first step. Because the more scenarios you can imagine, the more danger you can see that you can you imagine the dangers and then you analyze with logic, you see more danger and paths to failure than there are to success. And you forget that if you don't start walking, you'll never find out. And I struggle with this even now. I've struggled with it a lot through my life, even to the point of panic attacks. You know, if you're a writer, it can be any number of things. Any artistic pursuit, it can be any number of things. The uncertainty of feeling like, what if this doesn't make sense? You know, what if my painting is ugly? What if nobody connects to it? What if nobody understands it? And that becomes overwhelming. That creativity isn't a map, it's a compass. And you need to know your beginning and your end points, in my opinion. I created a GPS outline freebie to, that you can pick up if you're into writing, that kind of covers my system for getting started on a story outline by using those as your core points, beginning and ending. But it applies to all creative pursuits, that you need to know what you're going to be doing and accept your starting point. And also accept that the process itself has meaning to it. Which segues into the next part, which is obsessing over meaning. It's easy to get into this mindset of we have to make a grand statement, or we want to make a grand statement. Again, projecting our feelings of being intelligent onto what we're creating and setting unrealistic expectations for ourselves. We get terrified of making something that is pointless. And as I said, we forget that the meaning isn't the result. The act of creation itself has meaning. So, how do you break the cycle? How do you get out of the intelligence trap? Well, I think the best way is to stop being smart and start being experimental. Thomas Edison, and this is the actual quote, said, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps." So I have 3 things that I think could help you out a lot if you deal with these problems, any of them. The first is to shift from thinking in terms of identity to experimentation. You are not your project. Your project is a test tube. And if it doesn't turn out right the first time, you learn something and you try again. You keep experimenting. You learn along the way, and you will get where you're trying to get to. The second one is specifically for people who greatly struggle with overwhelm, and that is introducing constraints. If you are struggling with too many options, not knowing what path to follow, what story you want to tell, what painting you want to paint, give yourself constraints. Tell yourself something like, I am going to take this idea for a story. I am going to write this idea for a story with only 3 characters and 2 locations. Okay? Or for painting, you could say, I am going to take this idea for a painting and I am going to paint it in 48 hours no matter what. Within 48 hours, no matter what. Okay? The antidote to analysis paralysis, you could think of it in, and just too many options, is constraints. The third one is the good enough milestone. And this is accepting that it takes time to get better. It's to stop comparing your version 1 of something to version 10 of somebody else's. Focus on what the act of creation is, not what you want it to be. A good example I like to bring up on this particular issue, and it comes up frequently, is that Hemingway famously rewrote the ending to A Farewell to Arms. He said over, I think it was 39 times, he said in an interview, But when his notes were found after he died, it was actually over 40 times he had rewritten it. You have to accept that sometimes your first version is going to have to go through revisions as a writer. It will always need editing and revisions. And even as a painter, sometimes you can touch things up and your techniques can always improve. It is a process to learn how to do something, and that your first attempt is going to be a first attempt. You need to learn, and you will over time learn. So accept that sometimes you need things to just be good enough so that you can learn from it, and then you go forward and create something a bit better. So you remember I said I was going to introduce a question, and it's not going to be a comfortable question, but it is this. Am I protecting my ego, or am I pursuing my art? A lot of times the main reason that people don't finish things is because you're too busy protecting your status as a smart person or the creative person, whatever it is. It isn't just about smart or whatever. You have to let go of being the smart one, the smart person. If you really want to learn to do something, you have to be a beginner at some point. The beginning. You have to be messy. And the only way to progress is to finish things, learn from them, and then try again. If you'd like to check out some of my resources for writing, you can check that out in the description. Go ahead and hit the like button if this helped you out in some way. Subscribe for more videos of this kind, and primarily dealing with writing, of course. And I want you to take one of your half-finished projects. Open up the folder in your computer, go dig out the box in the closet, find one of your old notepads, and just pick one of them at random and finish it. Doesn't matter which one it is. Pick something and finish it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Later.